As we begin our service, I will ask everyone to prepare by silencing or turning off any cell phones or pagers you have so that we can really take this time to celebrate, to bring praise, to love, and admiration to Gary.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני אלוהי לא יחסר, בנותיך ירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינהלני. נפשי ישובב, ינחני במגלי צדק, למען שמו, גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות, לא ירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך, המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי. דשנת בשם ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
Please read with me the translation of what the cantor just chanted, Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We gather here this afternoon before we begin the Holy Shabbat on a joyous day on our Jewish calendar. Today is known as Shushan Purim. You may know Purim is one of our happiest days, our silliest days, our funnest days, a day of celebration and great joy. And on our calendar, this is the day when it is observed in Jerusalem. And we're not in Jerusalem, but of course Jerusalem is our spiritual home. So it is a day when we are supposed to be glad and happy. But yet our hearts are torn. Our tears are out for such a great loss as we remember today with love Dr. Gary Rosenthal. But we also realize that today is a celebration of a life well lived. And so you hopefully took this beautiful letter, this composition that Gary's family composed on the blue sheet that was outside in the lobby of our funeral home. And I'll just read the last line for now. For today we remember with great love and affection a devoted husband, father, and grandfather, a skilled professional, a loyal friend. Gary will be missed by scores of people, and we hope that you remember him with love always. Kerachev al banim, as a father has compassion for his children, God has compassion for all of us who are faithful. L'kol zaman ve'et, l'kol chefetz tachat hashamayim, a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for planting and a time for reaping, a time for keeping and a time for discarding, a time for loving and a time for hating, a time for embracing and a time for refraining, a time for slaying and a time for healing, a time for laughing and a time for weeping, a time for dancing and a time for wailing, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking and a time for losing. After living a full life, after fighting for more time here on earth, more time with all of you, Gary accomplished so much. He's departed from this world with a good name and in peace at the age of 83. Gary has left behind many in mourning. His beloved wife of more than 58 years, you Marcia. His children, Ed and Marcy, John and Adrian. His grandchildren, the apples of his eye, Erica and her husband Adam, Scott, Kevin, Bradley, Austin, and Raina. His brother Ken and Elise, and his siblings-in-law, Beverly, David, and Margaret. And now Gary joins his beloved parents of blessed memory, Hugo and Helen, and his brother Stanley, who died tragically young. He joins them all in their eternal home in heaven. At this point, our family has some very special remarks and tributes to share, and first we will call Gary's brother, Ken.
Hello, I'm Ken Rosenthal, Gary's youngest brother, Seeing all of you here today, I realize that I have the honor of knowing Gary Rosenthal the longest. I'm aware that you are mourning my brother's passing, but I want to celebrate his life as well. As there was a 15-year difference in our ages, my brother played a major role in raising me. After Marcia entered the scene, I had an extra set of ears to assist with adolescents and especially concerning girls. As a matter of fact, my brother Gary was the first Rosenthal member to meet my future bride, Elise. My brother was a man of many passions, passionate about classic cars. He even wanted to purchase my vintage Corvette, though I could not guarantee that it would make it all the way from my home on Long Island to Cleveland. Passionate with dentistry, like myself, I'm sure many of you have sat in his dental chair and are the proud owners of the smallest fillings, the perfect bondings, and the most beautiful veneers. Passionate about travel, mystery weekends, camping in national parks, international adventures through Europe, Asia, Africa, and South America. My brother did it all. However, I feel that his classic car trips might have been his favorites. Passionate about family, his beloved wife Marcia, sons Eddie and John, and their beautiful families. He was so proud of all of you. After our mother passed away, Gary and I made a pact that not a week would go by without a phone call to one another. At the start of each conversation, my brother would always say, "First, tell me about your family." When Gary was initially told of his diagnosis, his response was, "I want to live." He looked forward to celebrating his granddaughter Erica's wedding, which he did this past October. In addition, he was determined to visit Elise and I in February at our home in Delray Beach. What a wonderful birthday gift I received when I picked Gary and Marcia up at the Fort Lauderdale airport on February 26th. Our unforgettable week together included walking to the ocean, strolling Green Cay, a half-mile nature walk, visiting our parents' cemetery. and traveling to Naples to see our sister-in-law, Beverly. I can never forget seeing Gary surrounded by stacks of shoeboxes while selecting the 2 perfect pairs to buy. Last but not least, Gary ordered seconds at Ben's Deli while asking Elise and I what day in April works best for his return visit to Florida. Gary, you were the most wonderful role model, and I adore you. Please give our brother Stanley a huge kiss and all of my love.
Our next speaker is Erica. Erica is the oldest grandchild of Gary. And then following Erica will be Gary's son, Ed.
There's a lot of people here. A relationship with a grandparent is a very special one. As mentioned, I'm Erica, the oldest grandchild, representing one of 6 of Gary's 11 grandchildren whom admired, loved, and respected him deeply. I was very fortunate and extremely grateful to know my Grandpa Gary for just over 28 years. My grandpa was a multitude of things that I and my family cannot imaginably express in this short tribute. He was devoted and had a huge amount of compassion and pride. Pride for his long-standing private dental practice, but more importantly, pride for his family and everything we accomplished and continued to do in both our personal and professional lives. He came to everything for us and often babysat us, giving us lots of ice cream. His current favorite, as of last week too, was Ben & Jerry's. And he sometimes often fell asleep. We had many sleepovers growing up at their house, and I will always have fond memories talking and sitting on the screened-in porch in their house that I always call a respite. Him always listening with Grandma and giving us extremely practical and thoughtful advice. We also did many things with him and enjoyed his hobbies and passions, particularly driving with him in his antique cars around town and seeing him proudly show them at car shows and then going to the metro parks. P.S. He loved cars so much that whenever we got a new one, he wanted to know every detail and if we got a good deal, and he couldn't wait to see it. He was extremely hardworking and caring as a dentist for 59 years and for many families over several generations. He was our family dentist, making no issue of us coming on a Saturday morning when he would work anyway, and taking so much time and precision to make sure we had the best teeth, and he would follow up on all of our orthodontic appointments to ensure we were getting the best care. He was very loving, supportive, loyal, and compassionate. He had a great sense of humor. He would make funny voices when we would call and spoke German with my Grandpa Harry, them both reminiscing of their birthplace. He did a jump dance with my grandma that always made everyone laugh. I have a video on my phone, anyone that wants to see it. It would always end with a hug and a kiss. He loved to see the world. Not only did he travel to more than 20 countries with my grandma over the years, but my brother's parents and I took trips with him and Grandma. I will never forget driving around and around a mountain to get to Yosemite National Park in California. He, of course, was the driver, and as much as I felt motion sickness and like we might fall off the cliff, we all trusted him with our life and knew he was a better driver than all of us. They also took their grandchildren on special trips. I have fond memories of me, Grandma, and Grandpa going to Elizabethtown, Kentucky, and the Army base where my dad was born, and seeing a horse race together. He persevered and fought so hard for his life over the past 18 months since he developed pancreatic cancer. Again, he was extremely proud, at times even a little stubborn. Through the surgeries, rehab, and hospital stays, he always said he was hanging in there when you asked him, never wanting to show how he was truly feeling, and always wanting to live his life to the fullest and enjoy time with his family. Last summer, he got tickets to an Indians game, and even though he wasn't feeling well, he insisted on going and he invited me. The two of us went, him insisting on driving, of course, and us eating in the terrace club and sitting in the upper deck. He wanted so badly to be at my wedding in October, and he truly defied all odds and expectations. He pushed himself, insisting on not using a wheelchair, not using a walker, not using a cane, and instead he walked down the aisle with the help of my grandma and my brothers. My grandpa not only loved, respected, and supported our family, as you can tell, but he had an undying love and devotion to my grandma throughout their almost 59-year marriage. I hope to experience even a fraction of the love, friendship, and memories he and my grandma shared and still have. He was truly a role model in so many ways, with qualities I try and will continue to emulate in his shining memory. There are so many tributes we have received on the phone, in person, in letters, online, that truly show the true testament of what an amazing person he was. Grandpa, I will think of you every day. And will live up to your values and morals you instilled in me. I will miss everything about you that I have mentioned, including your hugs and kisses. You enveloped me in every time we saw each other, even just a few days ago. I love you so much, always and forever. May you rest in peace and continue to be as peaceful as your passing was.
My father would have been more, I hope you can hear me. He would have been more than impressed. A friend of his spoke to me on the phone today. We talked about a couple things. And let me tell you, what that man said was he had many, many friends, and I can tell by the number of people here that is very true. What I will say may have been said already, but since his oldest son, I think I have the right to say it again. First of all, I want to thank all of you for coming today, and it is sincerely appreciated. I will take a few minutes and tell you a little bit about my father. Gary Frank Rosenthal was born on July 2nd, 1932 in Berlin, Germany, to Hugo and Helen. In 1933, because of Nazi persecution, where laws were passed that the German Jewish doctors could not practice or see any patient that wasn't a Jew, my grandfather made the decision to come to the United States. They were saved by an Uncle Benno who sponsored, I believe, 8 people. And in those days, you had to have a sponsor. You didn't walk across the border. He was a Holocaust survivor. He never dwelled on it, and it did not define him. They settled in Cleveland, Ohio, which I believe was due to an Uncle Fred, my grandfather's brother, who was an executive at the May Company for many years. They lived a variety of places, but the ones that I remember hearing about the most were on and near Coventry Road. And in those days, my grandfather had a medical office. He was a family physician in the front of their apartment, and they lived in the rear. My father talked about this home, and he even mentioned more than once he remembered the Iceman coming to deliver ice. That takes you way back. They moved to Euclid, Ohio, which is at that time a growing area because of the Second World War, where many factories were located. And my grandfather established a practice on Lakeshore Boulevard for many years. My father graduated from Euclid High School. He went to Western Reserve College, but through fate, after only 3 years, was accepted at Ohio State Dental School. He initially applied to medical school and wanted to be a pediatrician. And to the best of my knowledge, he never withdrew his application. He wasn't rejected, but got into dental school and went instead. He graduated with honors in 1957. Prior to that, he met my mother. They courted and became engaged and married. My father was in the United States Army. He enlisted, well, I shouldn't say enlisted, he became ROTC in 1950 at the age of 18. He marched at the Armory in downtown Cleveland on weekends. He was in the Army for 12 years, active duty from 1957 to 1959, I believe, where I was born when he was stationed at Fort Knox in the Dental Corps. Once again, he was proud of it, but he never dwelled on it. He graduated from Ohio State, and he took his commission to be an officer the same day he graduated at Fort Hays in Columbus, Ohio. After the military, he came to Cleveland in and around 1960. He worked for another dentist, but then he opened an office on Mayfield Road in Lyndhurst, which is now IMG Jewelry, and he had an office there for 8 or 9 years and moved to 6028 Mayfield Road, where he finished his practice with a total duration of 59 years. That is amazing. Never once, and believe me, every single one in this room has a job, never once did he complain. My mother called him a battering ram, but I called him the Iron Man. He loved what he did. He was extremely successful, and as many of you know who are his patients or were his patients, he was good at what he did. He had a very light touch. He even pulled my wisdom teeth, and I didn't feel a thing. It wasn't bad. On March 15th, March 15th of this year, he officially retired. He sold his practice on March 17th, and he died on March 22nd. He had many passions. The first and foremost was my mother, my brother, and myself, and his 6 grandchildren. Some things that I recall, you know how you go through these things in your head when you lose someone. When I was a student at Ohio State University in 1977 to 1985, I would call them on Sunday mornings. In those days, you called long distance for yourself. Then they called you back. And we laughed about it. He always talked to me first. He talked to my mother. And then again, he wanted to talk to me. He loved being a dentist. And as a tribute to him, one of his dental mirrors. As you know, he loved cars. There's a picture at our home that I hope you all can see. He's about a year old, and it's, I believe, an early 1930s Ford. It's a picture. I remember as a young child, I was about 11 years old, we went to Friedman Buick, which was at the corner of Somme and Mayfield Road, and we would go on a Sunday to watch the guy unload the cars, because he loved to look at the new cars, the colors, and all the models. And that is true. He was very proud of his first Cadillac, which was a 1976. That was before we had Lexus and all these other cars. He was proud of John's cars, which were a variety of sports cars. And he loved to hear, as Erica said, about the new colors, trends, etc. Unfortunately, he was quite ill for a while, and there were some scary moments. But when he told me this, and I truly believed it, when he drove, it made him feel better. These are the keys to his 1941 Cadillac, which I have driven many times, and I will again. He owned many antique cars, and they weren't just antique, they were classics. A 1928, and he was proud of every one. A 1928 Packard, a 1950 Hudson, 41 Cadillac, 46 Cadillac, and a 47 Lincoln, and he still has 3. As the expression goes, he was a kid in a candy store. He loved being a leader and a judge at a car event called Stan Hewitt, which is always on Father's Day. He loved my mother and my brother very much. He loved to travel with my mother. And though I think my mother organized all the trips, which I know she did, he loved every minute of it. And they went a lot of places. As Erica said a few minutes ago, I remember when we went as a family to Yosemite National Park, and one night we stayed in a campground in a tent, everybody, separate tents, And as the bears walked through the campground in the middle of the night, he said, "Oh, this is delightful." And that is true. I remember going on family vacations, and we would leave at 4 a.m. He had many other accolades, of which he was president of the Hillcrest Dental Study Club for over 30 years. And he just resigned when he got sick, like months ago. He was on the Planning and Zoning Commission for the Village of Mayfield for over 20 years. He was on the Board of Trustees of Temple Emmanuel, and he was an officer and judge, both local, regional, and national events for his car club. Some personal memories of my father that stand out. We were in Indian Guides together, and his name was Silver Star. He was a leader in my Boy Scout troop. But one thing I'll never forget, when I was about 10 or 11 years old, he would wake me at 6:30 in the morning, and we would build little car models together in my bedroom. You don't forget that. He loved to go out to dinner, and I think one of his favorite places was the Chinese restaurant, and one of them was called Chunghwa, which is in Cleveland, I believe still, where every family member of my father's side would go. He was an amazing listener and a great judge of character and people. Other events of my personal life that relate to my father are the day I became a bar mitzvah, the day I became an Eagle Scout, the day I was accepted to medical school when he opened the envelope at my home and he called me. I'll never forget that. The day my brother was accepted and graduated from dental school. The day I got married. The birth of my 3 children and my brother's 3 children. And lastly, Erica's wedding. And that was tough, but he did it. You know, it was very strange, and everybody has their own way of dealing with healthcare issues. And he asked me to be his doctor, of which I had great reluctance. But you know what? We reassured each other. I reassured him, and honestly, he reassured me. And it worked out. If you had a dictionary in front of you and you looked at the word mensch, you wouldn't need words. You'd have his picture right there. My father-in-law said that the other day, and it's very true. He went through a very, very difficult recent ordeal for 19 months, which was more than formidable. I don't need to tell you all the details, but as a doctor, they were unbelievable. And he survived. And he told me he did it for one reason, and that was for his family. He was a great son to my grandparents and a wonderful brother to his 2 siblings, Stanley and Ken. I will think of him every day, and at times I am sad, but I also recognize that he achieved a great deal in life, and I will remember him with this legacy. Lastly, I would like to thank certain people who helped me recently. My wife and my 3 children, my Uncle Ken, who I talked to many, many times on the phone, my brother, but most of all, my mother. She is and has been the voice of reason. I am sure she will do very well, as she has a very loving, strong family and very strong group of friends. And I truly believe that. And may he rest in peace. Amen.
I thought he was going to leave me the keys. Oh, what beautiful words and beautiful tributes. Gary was an all-around good guy, kind and loving. He loved his family. He loved his practice. He loved his cars. He never gave up. He was formidable, steadfast, and headstrong. He was diligent, neat, and ordered, very hardworking, successful, well-liked, and accomplished. He was a people person, a man who loved food, loved his yard and nature, a proud Jew who always wore his chai around his neck every single day. He liked to joke around. He had a great sense of humor. Stubborn and passionate, his strength and energy gave him the drive to achieve all he did in his lifetime. Most of all, as you already heard, Gary was a proud father and grandfather, a loving family man. We've already heard much of his life, as much as can be encapsulated in the 15-20 minutes we had so more. I'd like to add just a couple more pieces, and that is what the story tells about how Gary and Marcia met does not include the first part, which was told to me, which was Marcia was in a sorority. And the sorority, D Phi E, had an open house, and she wasn't that excited to attend, but then she heard that the AOs, the Alpha Omega, the dentists, were coming over. Now, Gary at the point was dating someone taller, a sorority sister of hers who was tall. Now, Marcia may not be as tall as that, but Marcia caught Gary's eye, and then this beautiful story, which you'll read about him taking her out on a Friday night to the Hasty Tasty on High Street in Columbus, and then running out of gas, having to call her house mother because she was past curfew, and coming back and getting gas with that milk carton. It's a beautiful story. You already heard that after the Army they returned home to Cleveland, but Ed talked about how his path brought him to be a physician, really following the path of his uncle and grandfather, and of course dentistry and medicine are really one and the same. But John, you shared with me that you always liked the sciences growing up, and that Dad directed you directly towards dentistry, and that your first 10 years of dental practice, you were with Dad in his office, and you appreciated so much that opportunity to spend those 10 years side by side with him. And you saw what made him the best dentist. You told me it was how he built relationships with his patients and how well he worked with his hands. And it was that time together that helped you decide to build your own successful dental practice. And we know how proud Dad was of both of you, you with your dental practice and Ed with your medical practice. This was a family man who loved his sons and truly appreciated their success. Gary and Marcia truly loved each other. As Marcia told me, he gave me a good life. They were always playful and fun, traveling the world together, loved to go out to restaurants and movies, always busy, always going out or going away. And in fact, when the kids needed you to babysit, they had to schedule you very far in advance so that your calendar could be clear. Together, you always threw great parties, usually themed parties. In fact, usually a Purim party around now. And the last party that you threw together was the pasta and poetry party. You would plan mystery weekends, which Ken alluded to, which meant each time one of you planned a weekend. And Marcia, when it was your turn to plan, the only thing that Gary would ask are two questions. Number one, do I need to wear a tie for where we're going? And how much money should I bring? Just a few highlights of the mystery weekends were going rock climbing, canoeing, riding a pontoon boat in the Erie Canal, and one time Gary took you, Marcia, to the petting zoo. Truly in love with each other, you were best friends and could tell each other anything. And as Gary always complimented you, Marcia, till his last day, with you by his side at home. You moved into that beautiful home in Russell Township 27 years ago in the country, and 9 years ago, you built his dream house, giving up your beautiful garden that you had in the backyard on the lawn. You gave him that garden space so that he could build that special garage for those classic cars, filled with the license plates from all across the world. Wherever anyone in the family went on vacation, they had to get a real, true license plate where it was from, where they were, and they would bring it, and it would be proudly displayed in the garage. Eric and Adam, you got one for him when you went on your honeymoon to Curacao. And I know Kevin, who was in Brazil this week, and had to fly back to be here today. I know he was trying his best to get a Brazil license plate. I didn't hear if you were able to get one, though. I know that the home is always filled with photos and family pictures, and that really gave him a very special place. And especially his father, Hugo's paintings and memories also fill the home. And pictures from special trips like the one that you took to Yosemite and the one to Mexico with John's family. We already heard what incredible father Gary was. He may have been a little bit strict, but he taught Ed and John responsibility and the meaning of hard work. He was great counsel for his boys. You both told me how much you admired your father and how much you both model yourselves after him, both at home and in your offices. You fondly recall family trips, driving in the cars with Dad, and when you married, you expanded the family, welcoming daughters-in-law into the family as his own. And I want to say that I know Gary was particularly close with Marcy, who cared for him like her own. You had such an incredibly special, close bond. And what a grandfather. Grandpa Gary was so proud in each of every one of you. He always told you, I love you, like Erica said. Always interested in your lives, was an active part. Scott, you shared with me that he always gave great advice. Erica, you told me that Grandpa Gary was always a lot of fun. He never missed a celebration. He never missed a graduation. Gary loved food, not just Chinese food or deli. He loved a good fish and chip sandwich. He loved Marcia's cooking, though, the best. Whatever you made, he loved it. In particular, he loved your classics, stuffed peppers and potato salad. He always complimented you whenever you ate all of your creative cooking. And there was nothing better than ice cream. An avid sports fan who loved to talk politics, he was an animal lover. His father was an original member of Gates of Hope, which later became Shari Tikva. He loved parks, loved mowing his own grass, took great pride in his lawn, but in the end he never wanted anyone to fuss over him. He wanted to take care of each one of you. He may have been rigid and neat, punctual and methodical. He woke up at the same time every day, 6:30 a.m. He ate the same breakfast every day. He may have been a bit set in his ways, but he was also fun and personable. With a huge circle of friends, he was always there for each one of you. We know that he battled his illness. He had great valor, great courage. With a smile and his full self, just as he approached everything in life, he also approached that illness. And as you said, he was able just a few weeks ago to be with you, Ken and Elise, in Florida. He was able to be at Eric and Adam's wedding, to continue his practice until just last week. He never complained. Even when he was having a tough time, he'd simply smile and say, I'm hanging in there. He always remained strong, and that's thanks to your love and the love of everyone who is in this room today. You've been by his side all the way through. You've done everything for him, making him laugh, telling old and new stories, simply holding his hand and telling him, I love you. You should surely know how much Gary loved each one of you, and I'm certain you know how much you loved him. Today we can surely say that he's no longer suffering. He's at peace. May his name always be for a blessing, and we say, Amen. We rise now as Cantor Shipman chants the memorial prayer.
Eloha selichot chanun verachum erech apayim v'rav chesed hametzech aparat pesha ve'akravat meyesha umenucha nechona tachat כנפי השכינה, במעלות הקדושים הטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת מי בן הוגו והלן, שהלך לעולמו. אנא בעל הרחמים, זכרה לו לטובה, כל זכויותיו וצדקותיו, בארצו לחיים, ופתח לו שערי צדק ויורה, שערי חמלה וחנינה. בשא כנפיך הסתירהו לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים ונשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על מי שקבו, ונאמר אמן.
God of forgiveness, you are gracious and compassionate, patient and abundantly kind. Grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Mayor of Gary Frank Rosenthal, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that you remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that he has performed in this world. May he find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. And we all say, Amen. Please be seated. Following the service, interment will be at Mount Sinai Cemetery. And then following burial, we'll return to Marcy and Ed Rosenthal's home, 32850 Aspen Glen Drive in Solon. The family will be sitting today just until 5 p.m. because of Shabbat. And then Shiva will resume Saturday night from 7 to 9 p.m. and conclude on Sunday from 1 to 8 p.m. Friends who wish may contribute to the hospice of the Cleveland Clinic. Adonai menachem etchem. May the all-loving and compassionate God bring all of you comfort, bring Gary peace. May his memories remain in your hearts forever, and we say, Amen.